Hello, everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about the Supreme Court of the United States versus Creative LLC, and I'm going to help you with answering some of the questions that you were presented with. So the first thing we want to look at is where is this case, who's writing this case? Where is this case coming from? Well, this case is coming from the Supreme Court of the United States. So that's the court that issued the appeal. They're the ones that are writing the opinion, okay? As a side note, Aubrey Ellenis, in this case, you're going to see the state of Colorado a lot and go, what's the state? Who's this Aubrey? Well, Aubrey, just as a side note, is the director of Colorado's Civil Rights Division, and so they handle the enforcement of the Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act. So they're the ones in charge of making sure it's followed, and you can't sue the state in a case like this. So you would sue whoever handles that case. Now, basically, it starts out saying, like many states, Colorado has a law forbidding businesses from engaging in discrimination when they sell goods and services to the public. Laws along these lines have done much to secure the civil rights of all Americans, but in this particular case, Colorado does not seek to ensure the sale of goods or services on equal terms. It seeks to use its law to compel an individual to create speech she does not believe. The question we face is whether that court violates the free speech clause of the First Amendment. What this is this, what I've highlighted is this is the actual question before the court, right? Whether what course violates free speech, whether the course of action of compelling an individual to create speech that they don't believe in violates the free speech clause of the First Amendment. That's what they're trying to decide. Is that a violation of your First Amendment rights? It goes on to then say, through her business 303 Creative, Lori Smith offers websites and graphic design, marketing advice, and social media management services. And it talks about the background. And what I did is I highlight what I think are some of the important factors would be the background, or what we call the facts of the case. That she offers these websites, that they're expressive, designed to communicate a particular message, okay? And it also goes on and says that she's never created expressions that contradict her views, and she worries now that she's going to be forced to convey those messages. And so that's really the background, how we got to this decision. This you would want to write in your own words. You don't want to use a copy or paste. You just want to say, listen, she does websites. She's never done anything against her own views. She's worried that this statute that Colorado has is going to basically force her to convey those messages. All right. And so that is a continuation of the background of the case. So to clarify her rights, so what is she doing? Clarifying her rights to do what? To determine whether or not she is required to convey messages she doesn't believe. She sought an injunction. So who filed it? Ms. Smith filed a lawsuit. And why did she? Basically, to prevent the state from forcing her to create wedding websites that would defy her beliefs. And who was the defendant? To prevent, she's asking an injunction. And just as an aside, an injunction is something to say, court, make them do or don't do something. And then what happened? The district court ruled against Ms. Smith. So basically saying the statute's good. You're going to have to, if you want to do these websites, you're going to have to do it, not discriminate, according to what we say. And then she appeals because it's against Ms. Smith. And guess what? The 10th Circuit, they agreed with the district court, which ruled against Ms. Smith. Okay, so Ms. Smith then appealed, and the appellate court agreed with Ms. Smith. I'm sorry, with the state. So the reasoning. Well, this is all about the 10th Circuit. So they tell you why the appellate court decided what they did. And basically they said that she's not entitled to it because she said that court said that her the wedding websites were pure speech and they're protected by the First Amendment. And so there are different tests that you use in order to determine whether the laws are valid if they're violating your First Amendment rights. And this would have to, they would have to show a compelling reason. And what they said is basically ensuring access to a particular person's voice. We have a compelling interest in protecting, so that's a valid interest. Okay, so the appellate court again, what did they decide? They said state had to show both Ms. Smith that forcing Ms. Smith to create speech would serve a compelling interest, and they go on to say and explain what that compelling interest is. So, who appealed the appellate court decision? Again, we're going to know Ms. Smith. So a couple places you're going to find in the opinion the same answer. And this is what was the reasoning of the Court of Appeals. Okay, the court is basically, this is also going to be the issue. It's going to be, did the Court of Appeals get it right? Okay. So what does the court do? They look to precedent. If you read this section, it's talking about, well, listen, 10-second courts thought Colorado could compel speech from Ms. Smith consistent with the Constitution. They're saying, well, wait a second. Our First Amendment precedents laid out teach otherwise, okay? And so what prior case? Well, there's two cases you can put. One is in Hurley. They said that when the state sought to force parade organizers to accept participants who would affect their message, that was not permissible. And Dale was another one, right? Okay, so those are two cases they used. And how is it similar to this case? Well, if you read, it says, oh, and I'm sorry, there's Barnett. So there's three cases. You can put any three of those. Here, Colorado seeks to put Ms. Smith to a similar choice as these prior cases. And what is it? What's the similarity? Is if she wants to speak, she must either speak as the state demands or face sanctions for expressing her own beliefs. Sanctions that may include compulsory participation in remedial training, and then it goes on. So it's basically saying these cases are the same where we said the state can't do this to you. They were choices, they were cases where the defendants in those cases, or the petitioners in those cases, were put in the same choice. Do I do as the state tells me? And if I do, I have to go against my own beliefs. And if I don't, I'm going to get sanctions. Okay. And so then it goes on and it talks a little bit more about its reasoning, saying, think about the things that would happen if we went under the logic of Colorado, right? And then the next question was, how was the holding limited? Limited means every case that comes before us doesn't mean that the states cannot have laws that protect people from discrimination. So it says, we know that. We have states that expressly prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. And they said, and this is not exceptional, it's unexceptional. This is something that we have. They can protect gay persons just as any other class of individuals. So what they're saying is, we're not saying you can't have any laws to protect. And that's how this is limited. It's not saying the state is limited in what they can. But what they're saying is that you have to look when it comes to public accommodation laws, you have to basically look and see if it violates your First Amendment rights. And so this is how the holding was limited, by saying states are allowed to have these types of legislation. So it said it's not limited. At the end, it says, we then believe that they're denying your First Amendment rights, and because of that, the judgment is reversed. Okay? Persons are free to speak, think and speak as they wish, not as the government demands. So you can have anti-discriminant statutes based on sexual orientation, but what you can't do is force someone to speak or act in a way that is against their beliefs. So the court reverses the decision, and that's the last one. So in the future case briefing, you will look at different headings, such as you're going to do background effects like you did, but you'll do issue. You'll do procedural history. They won't be direct questions like this. So before you start your next case brief, please watch a video that is attached to it. And if you have any questions, as always, please contact me.